All right, so before we jump into that real quick, I wanted to mention a couple things actually. Number one is a huge thank you to everyone who has brought in food for our food drive for families in need right now. It's easy to stand on the stage and say something like this and it feel like, well, like the pastor's got to say this thing, but like from the bottom of my heart, I am so humbled every fall in particular by how generous this church is, by how generous you all are. We ask a lot of our people. If you're newer around here, we ask a lot of our church in the fall in terms of serving our community, and whether it be concession stands, which I actually need to talk about again in a minute, or whether it be the adopt a family stuff that we do, we ask a lot. This year we brought back Trick or Treat at City North, which was this past Friday night, and we had a big team of people here who had a great time doing that. And then on top of it this fall, we asked you all to bring food because there's some things changing in our world right now, and there are a lot of people in need. And you guys have stepped up massively. If you did not see on your way in today, back kind of in the back corner on this side of the lobby, there's just food everywhere. Like there's so much food out there already. So thank you all for being such a generous church. I am so honored and humbled that I get to be a part of that with you all. So I'm super grateful for that. We do still have a couple more weeks, I believe, remaining in terms of collecting that food. So if you haven't brought any yet and you would like to, please feel free to and just drop it out there. I'm assuming we're just going to leave the big pile of food. So look for a big pile of food and put it there. The second thing that I need to mention real quick is that we do have a couple more fall concession stands. Now, if you're newer around here, you may not know what this means, why we do this. A few years ago, we made the decision as a church to try to partner with Big Walnut High School in a way that maybe is a bit unusual. We found out that parents staff the concession stands at high school football games. Football is a big deal in Sunbury. I was a basketball player, so I've always thought they have that backwards, but it is what it is. So we made the decision to partner with Big Walnut High School and to staff all of the home concession stands so that no parents have to be in a concession stand while there's a possibility their kid is going to be on the field playing. As a former athlete, it means a lot to me to be able to provide that for people. And so we made the decision to do that, and it is a huge endeavor every year. And every year about this time, it's like, man, we maybe, should we rethink this next time? Because this is a lot, and people get tired because it's a long season. And Big Walnut's good, which means that we get into the playoffs, and then there's a couple playoff games. Like if we were bad, it'd be a lot easier, but it's a good problem to have. So I say that because we have 2 games left, and I'm very humbly asking for those of you who have already given a lot of time and energy to serve at those concession stands. We got 2 more games left. We've got one this coming Friday night. We've got one next Friday night if Big Walnut wins this Friday, which we probably will. So if you've never been a part of that before, or if you have, we would love to have you come out. It takes about 20 to 25 people to staff that concession stand. And we've got all kind of different roles that you can fill. It's a great way to get to know some people here. If you just want to get to know some people more, you probably get to know a lot about a person's character by slinging hot dogs next to each other. So would love to have you join us. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, you can go to calendar.citynorth.church and you'll see a place there to sign up for those 2 remaining games. All right? All that said, let's jump into the message for today. We are in part 8 of a message series we've been in now for some time. It's a message series that's especially important to me, and I'm going to tell you up front, today is the week in the series that I have been the most excited and nervous about throughout the duration of it. I knew going into it, this was a week that was going to be important to me for some specific reasons I'll get into here in a bit. But before I do that, I want to get you caught up. If you've not been here, maybe you have been, maybe you've missed a few weeks, that's fine. I want to just get everybody on the same page. We're in this series called One Another. And the idea is simply this, that throughout the Bible, it talks a lot about relationships. The Bible talks a ton about relationships, and in the New Testament, especially in the letters that were written by a guy named Paul, where he's writing to these churches that he started all over the ancient Near East, He's writing about many things, but one of the things that he often does in his letters is he talks about how we should be in relationship with each other. And there's a Greek word underneath it. The word is allelon. We've talked about this every week. You've heard it a million times if you've been here, but this Greek word allelon is a pronoun that marks reciprocation between two people. It is the word that is most commonly used when Paul is in these sections of his letters talking about how we should behave toward each other. And it's crucial. It's crucial because the reality is the images that are given throughout the Bible of what the church is that it's the body of Christ. It's the bride of Christ. It's this living organism that is made up of people. And as you all know, people can be challenging. People can be real tough. Sometimes people are great, and sometimes they're the worst. And when it comes to being a part of a church family, of a church body, of a church community, if we don't know how to one another the way God intended, it's really easy to get off track. It's really easy to end up with unhealth. It's really easy to end up stunting what God wants to do in his body. So that's what this series is all about. How do we one another the way God intended? How do we behave toward one another? In the first 3 weeks, we kind of laid a foundation that ultimately love is the foundation of everything. We must love each other, but not how we define it, how God defines it. We talked about how we have to have a posture toward one another of humility. And I'm going to say right up front, both of those things come into play significantly today. That's why I led the series off by laying that foundation, because if we don't have those things, then the rest of it sort of falls apart. And in the third kind of opening part, we talked about how we must have a commitment to one another. That to be a part of a body, to be a part of Christ's body, means that it has to mean something, and it has to be a commitment. It has to be something that we intend to bear with one another in the long haul. All right. So those were the first 3 weeks. And from there, we shifted into some behaviors. What does it look like to actually behave in the way God intended his church to behave? We talked about encouraging one another. We talked about being present and being real with one another. We talked about carrying each other's burdens. And then last week, we talked about how the body matures, and that biblically that's through serving each other. It's through serving each other. Now, this whole series has kind of built in a logical progression. And so today we're building off of all that we've done. And as we talked last week about how we mature as one body, it kind of brings up an issue. The issue is that you can mature in some ways without maturing in other ways. Some of you have met some people who are physically mature, but maybe not yet mentally, emotionally mature. Some of you have some of those people in your house right now. Some of you are thinking about glaring at each other, and maybe you shouldn't do that. My wife and daughter are currently having a fight in the second row, like right at this very moment. So that's fun. So we can mature as a body, but not fully mature as a body. That's one problem. But there's another problem. Maturing in the body doesn't mean that the body is healthy. As a church body, we can do all the things we've talked about. We can get all of it right. We can be maturing and growing as a church body, but we cannot be healthy. And today is of special importance to me because, in full transparency and honesty, this is a road that our church has walked pretty significantly over the last few years. We had this stretch of time as a church where God grew our church body numerically pretty significantly over the course of a couple years. We doubled in size during COVID, which like no one did. And we couldn't really point to any specific, it wasn't like we were doing different, like we were doing the same stuff we always did. God just saw fit to bless us in this crazy way. But what happened in the midst of it that we didn't realize until much later on is that while it appeared on the surface that there was this growth and maturity happening, under the hood there was an infection. And that infection, it hurt us pretty badly. And so 3 years ago, we were running about 100, 105 on Sunday mornings. And over the last 3 or 4 months, we've been down in the 60s on average. Now, I want to be clear. The reasons for that are specific. We've done a lot to address those issues, but what underlied all of it is what we're going to talk about today. It is very, very easy for a church body to mature on the surface, to look like the teenage kid who's, going through the changes, and all of a sudden, I just about said something, I just about said something that really would have dated me, and now that I'm halfway into it, I got to go ahead and do it. So it's like the teenage boy who picks up the phone at home. See there? Picks up the phone at home, and the person's like, "Oh, Kim, no, this is Andrew." Right? Some of you are like, "What are you talking about? There used to be phones in houses and not in our pockets." And when that was the case, you didn't know who was going to pick up. You just guessed. I remember my voice changed in 6th grade, and I remember so distinctly answering the phone, and it got to be where it was like a game for me because I wanted this to happen. So I'd try to go get the phone first so people would be like, "Kim?" That was my dad's name. "Kim? Kim? Nope, this is Andrew." Man, it made me happy as a 6th grade boy, let me tell you. So you can be maturing, but you can be unhealthy. And so many churches fall into this trap because we don't do what we're going to talk about today well. So again, we've been on this journey. We've talked about these things. Here we are today. This is the watershed moment for a church. I genuinely believe that. This is the watershed moment for a church. This is the moment that marks, not are you going to grow up as a church body, because you can grow up. This is the moment that marks, will you be healthy? Or will you be full of infection and disease and sickness? So I don't want to oversell, but the reason I've been excited about this, the reason I've been nervous about this, is because we've not done this great as a church over the years. Most of the churches that I've been a part of in my life have not done this very well. And if we don't do it well, it infects the body. But if we do it well, it brings health that is incredible. So we're going to pick up right where we left off last week. Exactly where we left off last week. If you weren't here, that's okay. You can always catch up online at citynorth.church or on YouTube. We're going to pick up in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11. Now, this specific verse, the first couple verses, are not in your handout today because I didn't have room. But we're going to read what follows. I'm sorry, I'm saying that unclearly. What is in your notes, I'm also going to read in a moment, but I want to give the context for it. So Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11, we were here last week. I want to just give you the context. This is what it says. So Christ gave himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers to equip his people for works of service so that the body may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. And we paused there last week because last week we emphasized how a maturing body is a serving body. Like a body cannot mature, a spiritual body, a church body cannot mature if we're not serving one another. So we emphasize the importance of serving. Now, if you were not here, I do want to do one brief thing on this quickly because I made a big push last week that if you're a part of our church family and you are not serving in some capacity, I made an appeal that you would sign up to help serve in some way. Now, again, I'm not going to rehash all of it because I did a whole sermon last week where I covered it. And if you're interested in the context, go take a look. But if you're here and you're not serving in some way and you consider yourself a part of this church family, I just want to ask, do you want to be a contributor or just a consumer? And so if you haven't made if you haven't taken that step, if you haven't done that yet, that's fine. You are always welcome here, even if you're not, to be clear, if you're not serving, to be clear. But we're a stronger body. We're a more mature body with you. And so if that's appealing to you and you were not here last week to sign up, there's green cards in your worship guides. There's also green cards back at the Next Steps area. We've got lots of resources back there, by the way. If you're interested in getting involved in some way, maybe you're like, well, sure, I'd help out, but I just don't know what to do. That's fine. Go talk to our Next Steps team after the service is over. Fill that green card out. Just mark that you're interested. We've got people that will reach out and help you get connected. All right, that's all I'm going to say on that. Now, this is where we left off last week. We emphasized serving. But this idea of maturity, Paul doesn't end it with serving. He continues. And where he goes from here is what is so important. So as Paul continues, he says this, then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves, blown here and there by every wind of teaching and the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every aspect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. So Paul here is connecting this idea of maturity, of serving each other, with the idea of speaking truth to each other. And it's an interesting topic that, to be honest, I spent a lot of time this week really digging into this and trying to wrap my head around how these things are connected. And it's almost like, let's go back to that maturing young person analogy. It's almost like the serving is what does the physical maturing, but the speaking truth to one another in love is what brings the mental, emotional maturity, which ultimately leads to health. Like if you're only focusing on one part of your maturity, you're not going to end up healthy. You know, if you think about it this way, maybe if as you get older, you just decide, you know what, I'm done with doctors. I know when my body doesn't feel right, I'm just going to figure it out as I go. Well, that would be an unwise decision. Even those of us who despise going to the doctor, we know that that's not smart, right? Well, in the same way, a church can grow in some ways, can mature in some ways, but it can leave out this other piece that actually brings holistic health. And I think that part of what Paul's getting at here, although he doesn't tease it out exactly this way, is that that's where this piece of speaking truth and love comes in. I'll get more to why I believe that in a moment. But before I do, I want to give you a couple more places where this comes into play. In the book of Colossians, which is another letter to another church, Paul writes this: do not lie to each other. Do not lie to each other. Since you have taken off your old self with its practices, and you've put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. Do not lie to each other. So again, there's this idea of speaking truth, of being honest. But then, where I really want to zero in today is in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, 1 Corinthians 13 is a very famous passage in the Bible. If you've ever been to a Christian wedding, you've heard this, because it's read at every Christian wedding. I avoid corny things at all costs. I just do. Except for with my kids, then I like to do them. I mean, that's a whole different thing, but probably some character flaw, I don't know. But I even give into the corniness of 1 Corinthians 13 at weddings because it's helpful and it's appropriate. And it's the love chapter, right? Love is patient, love is kind, all these things. What most people don't know, what many people don't know, is that 1 Corinthians 13, to be clear, most people know this, it follows 1 Corinthians 12. Okay, you got that. What most people don't know is what's in 1 Corinthians 12. And what's in 1 Corinthians 12 is Paul expanding on and writing at length about the body and the gifts that Christ gives the body and how the body must, you are a part of the body, and we actually read some of it last week. You are a part of the body, and each one of you has been gifted in certain ways to make the body whole. And then Paul says, and now I will show you the most excellent way. And he goes into 1 Corinthians 13, which begins like this. This isn't the part that typically we read in weddings. He writes this: if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but if I do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but I do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but I do not have love, I gain nothing. And then a few verses later, as he breaks down what love looks like, he says, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Why does this matter? The entire context of 1 Corinthians 13 is not marriage relationships. It's just relationships. Specifically, church relationships. Relationships within the body of Christ. Relationships where we are called, we are commanded, we are told to serve one another with the gifting God has put in us for the health of the body as a whole. And what Paul does at the end is he says, now look, this is all well and good, but let me show you what matters the most. What matters the most is that it isn't empty. What matters the most is that underneath all of this is a heart and attitude of love toward each other. That's what he's getting at with the whole, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but have not love. If I If I give all I possess to the poor but have not love, Paul's saying, look, you can use all these gifts in incredible ways and still get it wrong. You can do all the right things, but do them for the wrong reasons. And if you do, it doesn't really matter at all. And then he breaks down what it looks like. Because Paul, it seems, understands that we don't really understand it that often. We don't tend to intuitively get what love looks like, the way it plays itself out. And as he gives the list, love is patient, love is kind, love is all these different things, he gets to this one characteristic of love that, to be honest, I've kind of just avoided for a lot of years. When he said, love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. Now, the reason that I've avoided it is not because I don't care about it. It's because it's the only one that's confusing. The rest of the list is easy. Love is patient. Love is kind. It's never boastful. It's never jealous. It keeps no record of wrongs. Like, I get those. Those are simple. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth is a little bit more complex. But over the last few years, I've spent a lot of time talking with the Lord about this, trying to process through what does this mean, doing deep dives into word studies and all kind of Bible nerdy stuff. What does it mean? Well, when we put all these pieces together, when we look at how a body must speak truth to one another, as Paul says, when we think about Paul saying don't lie to each other, when we think about Paul saying love each other, and one of the things love looks like is that love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth, we start to get a little bit of an image that I think is crucial. See, truth plays a central role in the function of the body because it's truth that brings about health. Now, to be clear, this is not a strictly biblical connection that I'm making. What the Bible lays out is that truth matters in a body. What I'm doing is saying, why does truth matter so much in a body? And Paul doesn't specifically answer that. The Bible doesn't specifically answer that, but my experience with people does. Let me paint a picture for you. Let's say that you were to go to the doctor because you just didn't feel right. And you went to the doctor and you sat down and they said, hey, what's going on? And you listed out all the things and like you really weren't feeling right. Like something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but something's just wrong. Like, all right, hey, we'll do a full workup. We'll run this test. We'll run that test. We'll do all these things and we'll figure it out, right? So you go, you take the tests and you make a follow-up appointment in a week. You come back to the appointment, you sit down with the doctor and the doctor comes in and goes, hey, listen, I've got great news. Your tests are great. Everything looks awesome. I'm not sure what's going on, but whatever it is, I expect that it's going to resolve itself in the next week or so. Keep an eye on it. Let me know. A week goes by, you feel worse. You call the doctor back and they say, give it another week. A week goes by, you feel worse. They say, give it another week. At some point, you're going to go see another doctor. Well, let's say you go see that new doctor and they do the same thing. Hey, we're going to run this full workup of tests. You come back a week later for a follow-up and they come in and they say, listen, I've got terrible news for you. You have cancer. Well, you would be at that point, you'd feel a lot of ways. One of those ways is that you would feel betrayed by the original doctor, right? Now, let's say for a moment that you were a super bold person and you called up your first doctor and you said, hey, I want to know what happened here. Like, I'm riddled with cancer. You said there's nothing wrong. Imagine for a moment that that doctor said to you, well, look, here's the deal. I knew you were going through a lot in your life. I just didn't want to give you more bad news. I didn't want to upset you. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to make things worse. You would not accept that answer, would you? But I mean, the doctor's intentions were good. They didn't want to pile on, right? But if your body is full of infection and the person who can see the infection doesn't tell you it's there, that's not loving, no matter what they intended. Within a church body, I don't believe that a church body, that any friendship, that any marriage, that any family can be healthy if the people inside that relationship are not willing to be truthful with one another, to speak the truth. Because love does not delight in evil, love rejoices in the truth. It is not loving to pretend destructive things aren't real. It is not loving to pretend that unhealthy behaviors are not doing damage. It is not loving to lie out of your own interest of self-preservation. Because fundamentally, when we are unwilling to be truthful with one another, it is almost always coming from a place of wanting to protect ourselves, not actually care for the other. In the context of this series, what does it look like to be a church that's healthy? I would say that a healthy church is a truthful church. A healthy church is a truthful church. We cannot be a healthy church if we are not a truthful church. I'm not sure if that's going to be on the screen or not, but that is the first fill in the blank. A healthy church is a truthful church. Or to say it in the more negative way, again, a church cannot be healthy if it is not truthful. Now, this is really tough. It's really tough for a number of reasons. And to be honest, I don't have time to tease out all the implications of this today. As I was walking through and preparing for this week, though, I actually made a note. I do kind of ongoing sermon planning, series planning. I try to be planned out several months in advance, and I've got to lay out the beginning of 2026 here in a couple weeks. And I wrote down in my notes to myself when I go to do that, I'm really considering doing a whole sermon series on this idea because the implications of this are enormous. And there's actually a number of different ways that churches can get this wrong. And I don't have time to break them all down today, so I'm going to try to be brief. Because while on the one hand, a healthy church must be a truthful church, a church that overdoes this can also become unhealthy for different reasons. But a healthy church is a truthful church. Now, again, I don't have time to break it all down, but fundamentally, here's what I want you to understand. When I say truthful, what I don't mean is a group of people who walk around just saying whatever they think or feel because it's true, no matter the cost. Okay? When I use the word truthful, what I'm doing in my own mind is I'm connecting some dots. And ultimately, I'm returning to Christ, who, according to the book of John, is the way, the truth, and the life. And so I'm considering, how did Jesus model this? And I think about like the woman who was caught in the act of adultery and how there's all these people ready to condemn her. And Jesus, in some fairly miraculous way, manages without even saying words to convince everybody to leave, and then looks at the woman and says, "Does no one condemn you?" And she says, "No." And he says, "Then neither do I condemn you." But he doesn't leave it there. He says, "Now, go and leave your life of sin." Those are words we don't like to use in the modern church very much. But what Jesus does is he doesn't just bring the woman to the place where she's not condemned. He gives her the path to life. Because what he knows is that in that moment, she narrowly escaped death at the hands of her community, but that there was a spiritual death happening inside of her that he had to address too. Because if she had gone from there and continued in the patterns that had led her to that point, she may never face that mob again, but she would never be alive inside. And so what Jesus did that day was he brought her to a place where he showed her immense mercy and compassion. But the greatest mercy and compassion he showed was to speak truth that she would not want to hear. Because it was that truth that would bring life. I had to go for a health screening a couple weeks ago for our insurance, and we got the results back, and I bury my head in the sand about medical stuff. I just don't care. I don't even want to know. You know, Vanessa doesn't. She's the opposite of me, and she works in the healthcare world. So she's a social worker, but she works in the healthcare world, so she understands all the numbers. And I came home the other day, and she was like, "Hey, Andrew, we need to talk." And she doesn't normally talk to me that way. And I was like, "Okay." So we got in bed later that night, and she just flipped her phone around. And now here's what I know. Red is a good color, right? Red's a good color. So I had lots of good grades on the thing, lots of them. Not very many greens, which are bad. So pretty big win for me. Wasn't great. Okay, wasn't good. It was this moment where I was like, okay, well, probably need to change quite a bit in my life, probably quite a bit. Don't know how, don't really want to think about it, but probably need to make some changes. So she's like, you got to call the doctor, go in and talk. I haven't gone and talked to the doctor. Like, there's nothing major, like, it's lots of red, So here's the thing. I could be upset about those results. Or I could look at those results as a grace, as a gift. Because if I continue down the road without making some changes, it will lead to some problems that will cost me. And again, fundamentally, this is what matters so much about truth. Truth is the only way that we can know what we need to do in order to be healthy. It's the only way. So, a healthy church is a truthful church. Now, again, to be clear, when I think about the image of Christ in this, what I think about is that when Christ spoke truth, he did it in a really specific and purposeful way. He always spoke truth in love and for the good of others. So if you're a person who's like, yeah, I love this because I want to speak the truth all the time, is it for the good of those around you, or is it to feel smarter? Is it to prove yourself right, or is it to help them? There's two crucial ways that this impacts a local church. Two really, really crucial ways. Maybe not even the way it impacts the local church. There's two crucial ways in which we must understand our role in this process if we're going to get it right as a church. Two crucial ways. In Ephesians chapter 4, a little bit later on, Paul says this, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. On a very simple level, what Paul is saying, we have to speak truth. We have to be people that are willing to speak truth. Some of us are people that are very wired to do this, right? Some of us are people who are very, very, very willing to do this, who seek out opportunities to do this. Maybe a little bit of a bull in a china shop, maybe a lot of a bull in a china shop. But some of us are people that are wired yeah, truth. I can't wait. I'm going to go back to what I said a moment ago. Is it for the other's good or is it not? But some of us, on the other hand, are people that are wired very firmly to not do this. I had lunch with my mom and sister on Friday. My sister lives in Mount Vernon, and this week was my dad's birthday. My dad passed in 21, and one of the things that we get together around his birthday every year, just the three of us, and we were talking about dad, and we were talking about kind of our different personalities within our family, and my dad and I were very similar in a lot of ways, but my sister and my dad are also similar in some really funny ways. One of them is that my dad and my sister are both peacekeepers. They don't want to ripple the waters, ever. They don't want to confront things. They don't just hey, I'll just deal with it, sort of thing. My mom and I have a tendency more to be the bull in the china shop. I'll ripple the waters. That sounds fun. Let's just throw a rock in and see what happens, Neither one is healthy. If we're people that want to just jump in and speak truth all the time, we can really wound people. But at the same time, if we're people who are wired in such a way that we avoid speaking truth because we don't want to upset the other, I would take you back to the conversation about the doctor who's unwilling to say, hey, you have cancer. There are going to be, if you're a peacekeeper, please hear me because I'm saying truth in love right now. There are going to be moments in your life where the Lord shows you something in someone that you care about. And there may not be anyone else in their life that's positioned to see what you see. And if in that moment you are unwilling to say what you see because of fear of upsetting them, because of fear of putting too much on their plate, because of fear of whatever, then what you are doing is condemning them to be infected for the rest of their life. You must know that. You must know it. And you cannot say, I love you, if you are unwilling to say, I see the infection and I'm here for you. I want to walk with you. If you see something wrong within a church body and you are unwilling to speak up, you cannot say you love that church body. Now, this plays itself out in some really painful ways sometimes. Maybe you're on a team and you're frustrated with a teammate or your team leader. You have to be willing to speak to them. Maybe there's a leader that's making an unhealthy choice that you see making an unhealthy choice that's hurting the team or that's unethical, something. You have to go talk to them. When something feels off relationally with someone around you, you must go to them. The greatest infection that the devil tries to spread in churches, or the way in which he tries to infect churches, is through gossip. It's through gossip. Here's what gossip looks like sometimes. Sometimes gossip looks like a person going to another person, and can you believe this person and what they did? And they're just, I can't believe they did this, and this is not okay, and they wounded me, and how dare they? And sometimes it's full of anger and vitriol. But here's how gossip also sometimes plays itself out. Hey, I want to pick your brain about something real quick. This person did this thing to me and it really hurt. And I want to make sure that I'm thinking about it right. I want to make sure I have my head wrapped around it before I go talk to them, so that I'm not like making a mistake. Well, here's the problem. If you do that, now all of a sudden what you've done is you've potentially put a crack in this person's foundation with that person's. Now, don't misunderstand. There certainly are times where we should be wise as a member of the body of Christ. We should be slow to anger. Maybe we should get the opinion of someone else. But you have to be really, 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 really careful. Because if you're constantly going to get the opinions of other people to find out, like, well, should I talk to them about this? What it fundamentally means is you actually have a problem going to the person. And if you have a problem going to the person, it is gossip, and it is infection that will spread like wildfire. If you love that person, if you trust that person, because by the way, one of the other loves is love always trusts, then it is imperative that you deal with whatever's inside of you that's preventing you from going to them because you don't trust them enough. And that's something in you. Now, again, I want to be very, very clear. There are actually some problems in what I'm saying right now, or there can be. I don't have time to break all of it down today, which is why I'm considering doing a series later on. If a person has proven themselves untrustworthy, that's a different animal. If a person has engaged in malicious or abusive behavior, that's a different animal. Every church should have protection systems in place to make sure that a person has an avenue to do things in a healthy way. In our church, we have a team of elders. And those elders, one of the primary reasons that they exist is to help navigate conflict within the body and bring health. So every church should have some sort of a system in place, some sort of a process in place, some sort of a group in place to help mitigate this in unhealthy situations. But if you are going to be a part of a healthy body, you must be willing to speak truth. The second thing that is crucial that we don't often talk about is this. Let's look at Psalm 141 to see the heart of David. He says, "Let a righteous man strike me. That is a kindness. Let him rebuke me. That is oil on my head," which, by the way, was a positive thing culturally. You might not read that way now, but that was a good thing in David's context. "My head will not refuse it, for my prayer will still be against the deeds of evildoers." In other words, what David is saying is you must have the perspective that when a righteous person says something to you that you don't want to hear, it's a blessing and a gift. You must receive it. And so when it comes to being a truthful church, we must be willing to speak truth, and we must be willing to receive truth. We must be willing to speak truth and receive it. And ultimately, that's the behavior that marks a healthy church, is that we are people who are willing to humbly speak truth, but we are people that are willing to humbly receive truth. If when I got my doctor's screening, I said, "What does that doctor know? A bunch of idiots. It's all a big scam. Insurance, they're just insurance companies trying to give me medicine." Now look, you may believe that's true. I don't know, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I've got to ask myself a question. Am I willing to hear the thing that I don't want to hear from the person who is charged with caring for me? Am I willing to hear it? Am I willing to receive it? Healthy people welcome truth, even when it hurts, because they know it's the only road to health. We all have blind spots. As a leader, I've got a million blind spots. I'm grateful for the people in my life who have come alongside me over the years and been willing to say, Andrew, you did this thing. I know you didn't mean to do this thing, but this thing hurt me, and here's why it hurt me. I'm grateful for that because I don't know the blind spots there because it's a blind spot. Rachel, who leads City North Kids, has done this to me for years. Karina does this to me when she needs to. My wife does this to me. Our leaders do this to me. They hold me accountable. A few weeks ago in an elders meeting, we did an exercise that made our elders pretty uncomfortable and probably will make some of you uncomfortable even hearing about it. We sat in a circle and we said, hey, we're going to speak to one another the flaws we see in each other. And I was like, all right, this sounds great. Because I'm an antagonist, so I was like, this sounds good. After one of our elders went, I said, well, one of the things that I see in you is that you're too nice. Right now, you're trying to soften everything because you don't want to say the hard thing. And you have to be able to say the hard thing because it's for our good. We try to do this within our leadership groups as a church. I try to lead our church in this capacity. My hope, my honest to God hope, is that at whatever point the Lord sees fit to say that I'm done here for whatever reason, I hope that whatever small legacy I have will be marked by the people who knew me the best saying he was humble and he was willing to receive what was said to him no matter what. Because he cared first and foremost about what the Lord was doing, not building his own platform. The only way we can be healthy as a church is if we're willing to speak truth and receive it. And so I have a question for you. When someone tells you the truth, do you receive it as a gift or as an attack? When someone who you know loves you speaks the truth to you, do you receive it as a gift or as an attack? As a man or a woman of God, a son or daughter of the King, you must be someone that receives it as a gift. Not in your nature, but by your choice. It's a gift. It's a grace of God that he has positioned someone around you who cares about you enough to say the hard thing. I've counseled people often when it comes to relational challenges in this way. I say, if you want to know, like you're having this disagreement, this issue with this person, whatever, do you know my number one gauge for how I know who I can trust in my life? The people that I know I can trust are the people who have been willing to put my relationship with them at risk. They're the people that have been willing to risk what they like. They're my friends, right? If they're willing to put our relationship on the line, because every time you speak truth to someone that you care about, you take a risk. You take a risk of saying, that person saying, I don't want this. I don't want someone who's going to call me out. I don't want someone so I don't want you any longer. The people in my life that I trust the most are the people in my life who have been the most honest with me. Because they've taken a risk that no one else has. They've taken the risk of losing me. And if they're willing to take that risk, then I know they love me more than themselves. We must be people that speak truth. We must be people that receive truth. And so as we close, I want to ask you one more big question. What is it, do you suppose, that makes a church different from every other social organization on earth? Last night we had a softball party for Brooklyn softball team, and there were a whole bunch of people there. It was our 12U team and our 10U team, and there were tons of people there, and we had a great time. It was super fun. It was a chili dump. If you're not familiar with that, I didn't partake because that just sounds gross. Everybody said the chili was great. I don't know. I don't mix food, so that's a level of hell for me, just flat out level of hell. I ate the cornbread though, because that wasn't mixed with anything. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time. But I found myself thinking, what's different about a church than this? Because we enjoyed each other's company. We had a great time. We built good community. What's different about a church? Why does a church matter? If I can get all that with our softball team. What's different is that a healthy church family that lives in truth to one another from a place of love is the only place where I can grow in maturity in Christ. Because those people aren't pushing me that way. They don't even know what is true and what is not. They don't even know what Jesus says is appropriate or is not. They don't, and they're certainly not going to tell me. A healthy church body that gets this right is a body that will push one another into maturity and health in a way that is not possible anywhere else. And if we do it right, it's a place where we build a level of intimacy and strength with one another because we've been through the fire. In your own relationships, think about this for a moment. The people that you're probably closest with, the people that you would say, they're not my biological brother or sister, that's my brother, that's my sister, I would do anything for them. Those are the people that you have been through unbelievably difficult things together, and you came out on the other side knowing we have each other's backs. Yes? In the body of Christ, if we are willing to speak the truth to each other, if we're willing to receive the truth, if we're willing to love one another in that way, here's what happens. There's going to come some moment in time where I'm going to wrong you, I'm going to hurt you. And to be clear, if you stick around here very long, I will do something that upsets you. Because I move 1,000,000 miles an hour and I can be dismissive, and it's never because I want to be. It's because I'm captivated with the next idea. But to you, it's going to feel like I didn't care. And if you come and you talk to me in that moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I am so sorry. I do love you. I'm with you. And I should have been there for you, and I wasn't. And that wasn't right. And you know what's going to happen on the back end of that? You're going to go, wow, Andrew, we really can trust each other. And our bond is going to be stronger, like quite a bit stronger. And the next time something happens and you upset me, I'm going to come to you and you're going to do the same. And now all of a sudden we're becoming truly becoming brothers because we've been through adversity. You don't become brothers in the easy times. You become brothers and sisters in the hard times. And when we as a church are unwilling to say the hard thing in the hard moments out of love for one another, we remove the ability to even be brothers and sisters. Because we never are faced with the moments that prove I'm with you and I will not leave. That's what's different about the church. We see this in many ways there's different arenas of life. You see this a lot in the military. This is one of the biggest things that people who've been in the military, they'll say this. But what's fundamentally different about a church is that we don't just become a band of brothers, we become a band of brothers in Christ. Where we are growing and where we are maturing and where we are being built up together on mission to see the world changed with the love of Jesus. There is nothing else like it on earth. There never will be. Imagine a place where people don't hide behind fake smiles, but we can have hard conversations and hug afterward. Imagine a place where we never bite behind each other's backs because we're so committed to one another before ourselves. Imagine a place where there's no infection of bitterness because secrecy cannot take root because we deal with those things in love quickly, kindly, and humbly. But every one of us has to decide, am I willing to speak and am I willing to receive truth? Am I willing to be a truth teller and a truth receiver for the sake of this body and for the sake of God's glory?